committees of sedition in their role in the Armed Forces of National Liberation, the FALN, a group that claimed credit for bombings across the United States. So people need to really understand this is a very, very serious charge. And Joyce, the question then becomes what Trump knew. Now, we know that, Trump is trying to say that he cannot be held responsible for anything that happened that day. But Judge Mehta, who is hearing that case in court, said the following: whether Trump should be immune from civil lawsuits, not talking about criminal right now, but said, what do I do about the fact that the president didn't denounce the conduct immediately? Isn't that, from a plausibility standpoint, that the president probably agreed with the conduct of the people inside the Capitol that day? You have an almost 2-hour window where the president does not say, stop, get out of the Capitol. That's not what I want you to do. But beyond that, you also have tweet after tweet after tweet from Donald Trump going back to December saying, be at the Capitol, it will be wild. You have his associates hiring members of the Oath Keepers as security, hiring Proud Boys as security, associating themselves with him. Is it possible, from your point of view, Joyce, for the DOJ to look at this conspiracy without looking at Donald Trump?
Well, this is exactly the sort of inquiry that prosecutors will have to engage in, Joy. I think you're right at the decision point that they'll ultimately have to look at. To prove that someone participated in a conspiracy, you have to prove that they entered into an agreement with people to achieve an illegal goal. Here, that goal is to interfere with the transfer of power. So it's not enough to watch approvingly from the sidelines. You actually have to have engaged with them in this enterprise. And that's the question that's always swirled around January 6th. It's whether or not there was involvement by Trump or by anyone around him. That's still the unanswered question here. We just don't know enough to answer it. We do know that many of these Proud Boys previously were involved in guarding Roger Stone. So that raises this obvious question of whether there's a link up. I'm afraid we're going to have to wait a little longer to find out the answer to whether prosecutors have the evidence to go that far.
Right, and you think about, the fact that we still don't know who planted pipe bombs, at the DNC and the RNC. The DNC, when the current Vice President of the United States, Kamala Harris, was inside during one of those plant bomb pipes. There is so much that we need to know. We know, Malcolm, that Donald Trump tweeted at least these 3 things. January 6th, be there, it will be wild. That was December 19th. We know January 6th, UNDC, December 3rd. He knew something was, at least he knew there was going to be a rally there. You could just say he just knew that. But why would he say it was going to be wild? Why is Bannon saying all hell's going to break loose? And then there's this January 5th tweet where he starts teeing up the idea that Antifa is violent randomly. That was the last tweet of the day, where he's talking about a group that has nothing to do with anything, but teeing it up. Later on, his followers all say, oh, they did it. If you were looking at this from, let's put it in the Al-Qaeda perspective, if you have someone like Osama bin Laden, also a sort of itinerant real estate guy, right, who's out there saying, we're at war with the United States, but he himself doesn't get on one of those planes, but all of the people who listen to him and who he's egging on get on those planes, and they commit the terrorist acts on 9/11. Is it possible to look at just the people who were in the planes flying them and doing the terrorism without looking at bin Laden?
No, and the people who were actually down there smashing the windows, breaking their way in, these are the level 0 heroes, as they like to portray themselves. But let me put it in this perspective so that you understand it from a counterterrorism world and why this sedition charge was so significant. You have tier 4 people, right? That's the average schmo who came to that thing. 40,000 people, 10,000 engaged the building, 2,000 penetrated the building. The next level up is this tier 3, which is the Stuart Rhodes command and control people on the grounds of the Capitol who help organize the military aspects of it and may have been actually doing command and control. Then there is the level that Stuart Rhodes will lead up to and the Proud Boys will lead up to. And that's what I call Treason Command, which was operating out of the Willard Hotel, which was the people who were the political leaders, the Steve Bannons, everyone in there who seemed to know what the plan was and had established a command organization in that hotel that was directly linked to the White House. And then you have the tier 1, conspirators. The Mark Meadows. All you have to do is watch Rachel Maddow, and you can start seeing these people were organizing entire bodies of states, the House of Representatives, and others to layer down all of the effects that were happening that day to consider themselves an entire coup d'etat. And that's what it has. You have 4 tiers that this is way beyond sedition. I mean, this is literally a plan to overthrow the government.
And the final question to you then, Joyce, if Donald Trump sought to benefit from an attempt to overthrow the government, an attempt to intimidate Congress into not certifying the election, and then false slates of electors being served up on a silver platter that Mike Pence was supposed to then take, he is seeking to benefit from a violent overthrow of the government and with a plan to substitute other electors. I find it very hard to believe that he could be completely ignorant of that and still be enthusiastically sitting in the White House watching it happen and not stop it.
You know, judges love to tell juries when they go back to deliberate after all the evidence is in at trial, you don't have to check your common sense at the door. You can use your common sense in evaluating the evidence. And that's true here. We all know what we saw. We draw logical conclusions. Now it's up to prosecutors to do the heavy lifting of making sure that they have sufficient admissible evidence so that they can prove guilt beyond a reasonable doubt before they bring any charges. That's why we see this painstakingly slow and frustrating methodical effort to put together the evidence. Sometimes as a prosecutor, you're able to go all the way to the top. You have enough admissible evidence to bring charges. And other times you don't. And one possibility here, Joy, is the possibility that it's not one linear conspiracy that starts with the foot soldiers on the ground and goes all the way up into the Oval Office. It's possible that there are different groups, each trying in their own way to interfere with the transfer of power. We'll have to wait and see what the Justice Department decides its evidence will prove.
I've been very frustrated myself with Merrick Garland, but on this one, I have to say kudos to the Department of Justice. This is an important case. Joyce Vance, Malcolm Nance, and yes, y'all, you better be watching Rachel Maddow because you don't want to miss it.